There's a lot of immature technology that we work with that keeps our communication kind of light and fast. We essentially do a lot of prototyping, a lot of kind of special projects or new projects ourselves. And we get them to the point usually where we're like, hey, we think we can build something here. We can like maybe build something good, maybe build something actually viable.
Welcome to Building with AI, the show where we engage in conversations with world-class business leaders in AI. Our goal is to uncover tactical advice to help you build and scale better AI products. I'm your host, Haroon Choudery, and today I have the pleasure of being here with Fergal Reid, VP of AI at Intercom, a platform that empowers businesses with solutions for customer support. During our conversation, Fergal talks about his journey since joining Intercom as its first dedicated machine learning hire. He provides a detailed account of the significant events that led to Intercom doubling down on the AI for customer support use case. Fergal also explores the company's approach to AI product development, addresses key challenges such as hallucinations, key success factors in AI integration, and much more. Before we dig in, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by Autoblocks, the AI optimization platform product teams use to create world-class AI experiences. So, you just launched V0 of your AI feature or product. What's next? Autoblocks unlocks an intuitive yet powerful optimization workflow that helps you continuously understand, improve, differentiate your AI-powered products. Understand how your users interact with your product by connecting user activity to what's happening under the hood of your application. Improve your product thoughtfully and iteratively. Integrate testing of your AI products into your CI workflow and run A/B tests to see what changes are driving great user outcomes. Differentiate your AI products with powerful fine-tuning workflow that lets you turn product usage data into training data. Get started with Autoblocks for free at autoblocks.ai. Now, back to the episode.
Fergal, welcome to the show, calling in all the way from Dublin, Ireland.
Thanks very much for having me here.
And so to kick the show off, do you mind giving a quick intro of yourself and what you're working on at Intercom?
Sure, yes. Yeah, my name's Fergal, and my job title is VP of AI at Intercom, trying to build better and better AI for customer support. Two main areas of focus are better and better chatbots and better tools for support reps who spend all day in the inbox.
Awesome. So you've been at Intercom for 6 years. Can you walk me through the journey of discovering how AI applies to the product, testing that out, and then eventually going all in? I think I was in SF just a few weeks ago and I saw you have billboards as well all over SF talking about Intercom and it's doubling down on AI. But can you walk me through the progression and the story of how Intercom got here?
Absolutely. I joined 6 years ago and I was the first dedicated AI or machine learning hire. And my mission really was to take R&D organization in Intercom that had at that point traditionally been a little bit skeptical of the value of bots and AI and start to build sort of an AI organization there. So that was about 6 years ago. And the first sizable thing we worked on was what we call Resolution Bot, which was our previous generation natural language processing powered chatbot. And so we spent a lot of time working on that. We built, I think, a great product there. A lot of customers use to do a lot of automated customer support chat. But it always had a major problem, which I think was really just common to the previous generation of AI, which is that it required a lot of initial investment to set up before it started to get good. And that was generally worth it. But customer support people are busy, they're firefighting. It's always difficult for them to find the time to make an investment, even an investment that makes sense. And so when we saw OpenAI's ChatGPT, the ChatGPT moment, and we saw everything change there, we were really excited for two distinct reasons. One was because, hey, this thing can just do a much better job of understanding messy conversation than the previous generation of technology. But number two is, hey, this thing is smarter. It doesn't need you to do all that upfront setup and work. And we were able to build a product around it that really is transformative. It really means that like within a few days, people can just set this thing up with very little work and it's doing great. It's answering a lot of their customer support volume. And so I guess the validation we've got from our product Fin that we've built on top of this tech and general direction of travel that we see this space has really caused us at Intercom to decide, hey, look, we're going all in on AI here. Owen, our CEO, has publicly said, we're betting the company on AI. We're radically expanding kind of the size of my team here, the AI team. We're radically going much deeper into technology. And we really want to be the leader in AI for customer support, almost at all costs, because we just think it's going to radically disrupt our space, and we want that disruption to happen with us.
So you have a background in machine learning, and you mentioned the ChatGPT moment, which, funny enough, was exactly a year ago today, was when ChatGPT was announced, November 30th, 2022. What differences do you see in the workflow for building production-grade ML systems versus production-grade LLM systems that you're incorporating into Fin?
Yeah, great. Really interesting topic. So I have a technical background, I have a PhD in sort of machine learning applied to network analysis and computer science maths background. We had been beta users of OpenAI. We had played a little bit with GPT-3. We'd been involved at OpenAI at a cursory level, like maybe 2 years before ChatGPT. But when we saw ChatGPT and Text Da Vinci 3 book come out, it was just this watershed moment for us, absolutely watershed moment for us. Loads of us in the company were like up late at night on Slack, like just playing with ChatGPT and playing with Text Da Vinci 3 and just being like, wow, look at this. This is different. I actually feel that the wider world still has undervalued ChatGPT and specifically has undervalued GPT-4. Like GPT-4 is just this sea change in terms of capability from where like natural language processing and AI generally was a year or two ago. I think a lot of people still haven't really got their heads into how deep that is. We have really been changing internally in the company how we work and how we develop AI products as a result of this. And this has happened in large ways and in small ways. In terms of in large ways, we've had probably two main generations of product development based on OpenAI's recent models. The first one was a really short, scrappy, hey, let's quickly get some prototypes out to our support reps in the inbox. Let's have a conversation summarization. Let's save them some time by using these models to summarize conversation. The second thing was a much bigger push to build this Fin bot built on GPT-4. And it's a whole new way of working with technology. It's a very different machine learning stack, a very different software stack. And I would say now we have a fair degree of experience of iterating at scale with like real customer data and learning what works with LLMs and what doesn't. And we're still learning about this all the time. But, you know, in the past, if we had a small problem to solve, we'd be like, okay, let's try write a classifier to do this, or let's try use some simple NLP to do this. And now we're like, hey, I bet we can build a prototype here pretty fast with GPT-4. We'll just tell it roughly what we want, put that into production, see if that works. And if it does, then we'll go and revisit it in terms of costs and efficiency. But the way to build MVPs of AI products has like completely changed here as a result. So yeah, big changes and small changes and a lot of adaptation and a lot we're still learning about running LLMs in production. But it's definitely different than previous supervised machine learning models. In some sense, it's not that different to what we were doing at Intercom. We've had like medium-sized machine learning models. We were running like medium-sized LLM, medium-sized language models. We were running like BERT and things like that in production for years. We kind of had what you would now call a vector database. We were embedding things. We were using that to power resolution bot for probably like 3 years or something like that at this point. So some of the stack has not changed so much, but yeah, it's still wild overall.
In terms of just making these LLMs behave as expected or leveraging their non-determinism in a way that still lends to trustworthy, accurate outcomes, what are some of the ways that you drive the results towards that direction? I'm curious, both from a strategic perspective, how do you think about those challenges? And then also from a tactical perspective, how do you actually build the systems required in order to achieve those objectives?
So when we started looking at whether we could push GPT 3.5, GPT-4 in production, the number one thing on our minds was hallucinations. Is it possible to build systems built in this that are constrained enough that hallucinations aren't a big issue? And our initial perspective when we just used 3.5 was like, no, it's not. You can put these with a human in the loop system, but you can't have them just talk to an end user. And then we got access to GPT-4, our perspective shifted. So GPT-4 is just much better at following instructions than the previous generation. So we spent a lot of time on, I guess, what we now call prompt engineering, asking the model nicely to try and constrain itself to just use the information we pass to it, and not to make things up, and to say no if the information it needs isn't in there. And we used a whole lot of different prompt engineering techniques like chain of thought techniques and things like that, where you say, hey, first explain your reasoning or step by step, or provide quotes from this document. And just things you can do in terms of how you engineer a prompt to bias it more for cost and latency, or to bias it more for like accuracy and being careful. And so we did a lot of experimentation, including experimentation in production with different version prompts like this. And over time, kind of have found balances that we're happy with. Building a system like that, our bot bin has many different prompts, and there are complicated dependencies between each of them and between as a conversation flows through the system from prompt to prompt. And we do a lot of A/B testing. We do a lot of like careful analysis, a lot of back testing to try and figure out, okay, we've changed one prompt. How does that influence the other parts of the system downstream? We're definitely getting better at this. Yeah, I think we've got a pretty good setup now.
And do you see that there's a lot of engineering best practices that are relevant in that process, or ML best practices that are relevant in that process? Maybe a combination of both? Or is there maybe a skew towards one of those?
I think best practices, I'm not sure that's quite the right word because it's so early. We're still learning by making mistakes all the time. But we've certainly learned a lot of things to not do. I would say we're definitely converging on a lot of things that are maybe obvious in an ML pipeline for a long time, right? Whenever we want to make a change, the first thing we do is we look at a prompt, we try and change the prompt, and we try and generate a back test. So let's say we're trying to fix a bug, right? We're trying to fix a problem where the prompt is doing something it shouldn't. And we try and gather a whole bunch of historical conversations with instances of that, gather those and form a back test, form a way of where we can like train different prompts. So we try and form a back test, we try and form a collection of those instances, and then we run tests. How does this solve the problem for 20% of these instances or 40%? And the other thing we've learned to do a lot is you can use GPT-4 as part of your development process. It's extremely good at labeling data. It's extremely good at interpreting data. So you can set up an overall test harness where you use GPT-4 to evaluate a change in prompts. Imagine that you have a situation, you know what the right answer is, what a previous wrong answer is. You run the system and then you say, hey, GPT-4, did this new prompt do a better job than the old one? And it's pretty good at, that's an easier challenge than doing a good job itself, and it's pretty good at that. So we'll have this sort of pretty evolved framework at this point where like back testing at scale. And then as always, once we're happy with the results from a back test, we move to a traditional machine learning A/B testing thing in production, look at all our metrics, look at exactly the end user behavior, and be happy with what we've got, or go back to the drawing.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of these techniques, and even what we're working on at Autoblocks, like a lot of it is focused on just creating determinism in a non-deterministic system, right? Like creating ways of doing deterministic testing on non-deterministic systems, thus the importance of having that data set of inputs that you can feed into your system and evaluate. And it's very interesting to see how different companies set it up. And as you mentioned, that's one of the things that I've been hearing a lot more about recently is how good GPT-4 is thinking about all this from a meta lens where it can help you make decisions on how you can potentially improve your prompts and what prompts work better. And it seems like we are converging on a path where a lot of this may become much more augmented or maybe even automated in just a short amount of time. I don't know, maybe Intercom's already there, but it does seem like that's the direction that the industry is headed in.
I know, I totally agree with that. We definitely use GPT-4, for example, to augment our general development process at several points. We use it at the sort of the research phase, right? Where maybe we would go in the past, have a human researcher go and categorize and taxonomize a whole bunch of interactions with our system and be like, hey, is it working? Is it not working? Where is it breaking down? Instead, we'll go and we'll set up a GPT-4 prompt to do that and to run that on a bunch of data. So that's kind of at the research or product discovery phase. We use it there. We use it at the validation phase where we're like, has these changes actually worked? Have they made things better? And yeah, and obviously, and we use it to actually to build a product. We're using like Copilot sometimes. And so this changes right across the entire like product development lifecycle here. Look, it's not like some magic tool. We're using it at little points and it's much better at verifying whether something is correct or not rather than suggesting a solution. Like we have done experiments using GPT-4 to try and iteratively write prompts directly. But instead, what we're doing is we're human developers who are experimenting with writing different prompts. We're using GPT-4 as part of our tool chain to validate those, because otherwise difficult to validate like messy natural language systems. And yeah, it's more reliable than you might guess at doing that. We've compared it to spot checks and ground truths. So for example, one thing we care about a lot is like, hey, our Fin bot gave an end user an answer to their question, to their customer support question. Did it actually answer their question? Was the answer relevant? And GPT-4 seems to be pretty good at saying, yes, it's relevant. How do you know? Oh, because the user went and said, thank you. Simple stuff, but a lot of work to do by hand. And yeah, you can just build a statistical system around that works well. Yeah, big change.
So Intercom, in your industry, it seems like Intercom has really adopted AI at a rate that none of your competitors have kept up with. A lot of your competitors are still in the development phase or beta phase with a lot of these features, whereas you're way past that. You're already starting to come up with certain optimizations. Your process is becoming more operationalized. What do you think was the secret sauce? I mean, is it a lot of those operational things that you've mentioned, some of those ways that you're leveraging GPT-4 to help you augment the process and tactically experimenting with some of these features in a small incremental way until they work and then expanding? And just curious, what is the secret sauce that you really think contributed to Intercom taking the lead here so far on adopting AI in a meaningful way into a vertical solution?
Good question. I don't know if there's a secret sauce. There's probably a range of different factors. Look, some of them are just like accidental, right? Here we are in customer support. Customer support is such a fruitful area inherently for LLMs and for AI. We've got lots of humans. They're typing out answers to questions in a chat interface. And there's a lot of structure in the domain. There's a lot of people asking and answering the same question, which is why we're already working in AI here. And it's just a fruitful domain. And so that's probably got a direct and an indirect impact. Got a direct impact in like this technology is very applicable here to deliver really core value. It's not some sugar on top of some other interface. It's core. That's just a factor of the domain. And then because that's a factor of the domain, we were already working on it. We already had expertise here and we're working on it. So those are probably two kind of maybe exogenous factors, I guess. But then there's probably other things that maybe we can take a little bit more credit for. So like Intercom, the company, has always been fast. Like different companies are strong or weak at different things. We're fast at software development. We're fast at shipping features. We're fast at shipping at a high cadence. Because the leadership in Intercom, our CTO or our founders for a long time, think that's really important. And so that's where the company spends its effort on, being product first, being shipping features quickly. And so we had a speed of iteration that enabled us to do that. There's probably other factors as well. We had like a CEO change, a senior leadership change, and the company was early maybe in feeling like, hey, it's go time in the tech industry here, right? We had a frothy 2021, but that's not going to last forever. And it's time to move fast and to innovate, to deliver our customers value. Because a lot of companies are not going to do that. They're going to like rest on the laurels. They're not going to make it. So we had this senior leadership change that kind of people were eager to move fast on whenever we did and cut through red tape. If any red tape was there, cut through process, if any process is getting in the way, just go fast. And then maybe a final factor is, we had a existing machine learning team and my team. There's certain cultural parts. We have always pursued a model of a machine learning team, which tightly integrates machine learning scientists with engineering production. So we have no gatekeepers between us and between pushing something to production. Let's say there might be a product team in the inbox who works on rep experience. We had the skills on machine learning team to quickly craft the first generation of AI features there, to work with that team to put them live extremely fast. Honestly, and ChatGPT came this time last year, and by the holidays, by the Christmas holidays, we had first version of our AI features live on Intercom to help our support reps. And we went away for the holidays. We came back with 2 weeks of like data, a week and a half of data, people doing it. So like in that time frame, we had to like spec out what the features were, develop MVPs of them, understand this whole prompt engineering thing, ship them to production and explain them to our CS team and see what they did. And this confluence of all those different things enabled us to do that. I had to push legal really fast to negotiate deals with like OpenAI and sign paperwork. I had like executive support to do that. That's very important in that kind of fast speed. So all these things confluence together, and then a virtuous cycle starts to flow, right? By the end of January, we had customer feedback. Then we're able to create alignment in the product team and overall in the company. This is not just a toy. This is not just a neat thing on ChatGPT. You can take these APIs and can ship real features. Customers love them. Customers love the summarization feature that we ship. And that kind of meant everyone at senior leadership in the company was like, maybe 2 months before, people were like, yeah, it's niche and this is definitely the future, but like, is it really going to work? Now it's like, hey, we've got customer data. Customers really love it. And a lot of imperfections, but customers love it. And everything starts to turn, right? The strategy discussions, you have data, things that previously were uncertain, collapse to certainties, and then people building them and people's head starts to go, where is this going next? And then we've got early access to GPT-4 because we now had this relationship with OpenAI. We were playing with this route. But this is amazing. This is another step change forward, and start to extrapolate that and create strategic alignments. And sometimes things just come together. And I think we've ended up being like, yep, this is transformative for our company. We're going to bet as big as it takes here to try and be the leader.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a perfect confluence of circumstances. It sounds like it was partially company culture. It was also the available talent pool that you had at the organization with all of these ML resources, and also the alignment of the org as well, just the way that it was structured. And on the alignment piece, the org structure piece more specifically, just to clarify, did you mention that AI and previously the ML engineers, now let's just call them AI engineers, is that a functional role? And do they interact with product teams? Yeah, I'm just curious to learn a little bit more about how that interaction takes place. Or are the AI engineers sitting within a product team?
Yeah, great question. We have a centralized, it's not an AI group. A year ago, it was the ML team, and it was a lot smaller. And it was my team, which I joined the company to create. And when I joined, I reported to the CTO, and we were like this special kind of, I guess, prototype org off to the side. And that was true for a long time. And I had this very strong belief that you must always have the ability to push code quickly. An ML team must have the ability to quickly, the very first prototype of anything, to quickly push that live and get feedback on it pretty autonomously without being blocked on stakeholders, without being brought locked to another product team. So we are still this sort of centralized function that maintains that. So we are a team of people. Everyone's extremely product focused. And then with the spectrum of people, some people are more like, we call them ML scientists. Some people are more like ML engineers. And it's a very senior team. Pretty much everybody on it is a senior individual contributor. And we do that because there's a lot of technical complexity. There's a lot of immature technology that we work with. That keeps our communication kind of light and fast. And we essentially do a lot of prototyping, a lot of kind of special projects or new projects ourselves. And we get them to the point usually where we're like, hey, we think we can build something here that we can like maybe build something good from, maybe build something actually viable from. So we tend to do initial proof of concepts ourselves. We'll often be dialoguing with a product team and with a product manager about that to get customer context or problem context there. But we tend to drive a lot of early prototyping very autonomously. And then as soon as we've got something, as soon as the majority of the risk isn't pure technical risk, but as soon as the majority of the risk becomes like product risk or customer contact risk, we'll go and we'll work with a product team with probably a hugely experienced PM who like really understands the customer problems very deeply. We'll work with them in parallel to get an alpha version or a beta version, whatever you want to call it, out in some form as fast as possible to get some feedback, and also to do a shaping exercise in parallel to that to figure out, okay, sometimes the AI group is like coming into an area of ownership of somebody else, and the product team own the AI feature, or does the AI group own the AI feature? There's always a little bit of blurriness to navigate there. Then Intercom is a pretty low politics organization, I think I can say. Pretty much everybody is just blind defending their turf. Everyone just wants to ship great things to customers. And so I think we navigate that on a case-by-case basis, and I think pretty successfully. And the whole organization is dynamic. Like all the product teams that maybe a year ago are getting pretty familiar now, and the footprint of AI products in the overall org is way higher. We've got like engineers across the company, like skilling up more and getting used to some of the blurriness and some of the ambiguity that you need to use with this sort of immature technology a bit more. And so I do think that the whole AI org is expanding and getting better. And we're still centralized. We're getting more resources. We're able to do more things. We're reorging, make that efficient. But then also like the whole wider company is like pivoting to learn how to be an AI company. Our product leadership is learning a lot more about AI. Individual teams are learning by experience. Engineers are scaling up. We're pretty serious about this level of bet the company's taking on AI. And I think it's worth it. I think it's going to be transformative to our space. And I think that's going to give us durable kind of edge here. I think it'll be that. I think we're taking a pretty big R&D org that's always been pretty fast, and we're learning how to be an AI org. So yeah, exciting time.
Yeah, I mean, so far it looks like it's working really well. And I had a couple of follow-up questions on the organizational structure piece. So when you do have the questions arise of who owns the AI feature, is it the AI team coming into the product, or is it the product team? I'm curious, the first question is, what is the default answer to that? And then number two, what involvement do product folks have once the AI feature is shipped into production? Are they actually involved in the process of evaluating the outputs, maybe even prompting?
So I would say that typically the product folk aren't like evaluating, they're not doing prompt engineering. That stuff all kind of lives in the AI team, and the machine learning features around that would live in the AI team. And typically it varies from product to product, right? Sometimes the product team will conceive an idea, come to us, and we're functioning as a technical expert. Probably the most common model though is that we're sort of aware of a product team problems, and we prototype something that we think is interesting or can solve them. And then we'll go further than that. We will actually go and lead the development, including the design of, you know, a very early like alpha version of something that we can ship really fast to get customer feedback on. And usually at around that time, sometimes the product team will help us ship something. Other times we'll completely autonomously ship it and they're reviewing our code. But sometime around that time, around where we've got something that's not junk. Yeah, this actually looks okay. You know, somebody's using this and it's doing something. This is probably not dead on arrival. Around that time, usually the product team gets pretty involved. There's a product manager there. They'll own like customer recruitment for beta. They'll start to own things like what do customers actually want here. They'll own beta feedback. Their engineers will start to take like maybe a pretty scrappy front end that the AI team will have put on it. They'll start to fit that into their design thinking. And then often they will take ownership of the front end and the product experience. And then we'll start to take ownership of the back end and the AI service layer underneath it. And that's a model that's worked pretty well for us in general. Maybe the downside of that model is it can be disenfranchising for a product team because they have a roadmap, and then sometimes out of left field, some AI team comes and they're like, why didn't you tell us this 3 months ago? We're like, technology didn't exist 3 months ago to build this. And we have here some explaining to the, not going to lie, there are points of friction there, but my colleagues are great. And I think we navigate those. And I think overall, as our AI function is growing, our product teams are able to invest more capacity into like future. I think those frictions are already reducing, and people on the AI team are able to spend a little bit more time with the product folks. Whereas a year ago, we were so lean. You know, this is like classic innovator's dilemma, classic skunkworks stuff. Do you put your new disruptive thing in a skunkworks facility somewhere else, or do you integrate it on a successful technology transition or a successful cultural transition like this? It always has to be a mix. You always have to have some element of skunkwork, some element of separation, because the culture required to ship in the new world is always a little bit different. But then it can't be entirely separate. You've got to integrate it with the org kind of works. Otherwise, it never realizes its potential and things don't ship. At Intercom, avoided funny into the problem of things not shipping, but we're still like navigating the cultural transition. How do we change to be a fully fledged AI company? And I say we're doing that. We're engaged in that. And that's fine because it's still early days here. The important thing is to think this is a real transition. And I think where people are going to drop the ball here is the analogy I use internally is, hey folks, we think we're an elite leading technology company. But we're not. We're an incumbent here. We are a bricks and mortar company in 1995. And it's like these tech startups over there, and we don't really understand them. That's the right model for us. You know, we're navigating, we're undergoing this transition. But like by default, we should be paranoid. We should assume by default that we have a transition to navigate here. If AI is as big as we think it is, there's going to be bits missing culturally. And so I think my AI group has got a lot of things figured out. And then it's like, how do we work with that as a whole product and R&D org? And I think Intercom is in transition there. And I think it's very exciting. I think people have wholeheartedly embraced it. So I'm extremely optimistic about our ability to go from being an incumbent in an industry that, you know, we've had AI, but it's been part of it, to like being a leader in an industry where AI is just completely changed. I'm optimistic about our trajectory.
Amazing. Yeah. And this is always fascinating to hear. And it's very interesting to hear this mindset as well about thinking about yourself as an incumbent. And you see a lot of organizations that really aren't what you would normally think of as incumbents, adopting that mindset in order to prepare for the influx of potential competitors, AI native competitors that may be emerging as a result of this leap in technological progress. And the companies that have experienced the most success in defending their territory have been the ones that have been aggressive, like the Intercoms of the world. So that all makes sense.
You never really know in the early days of technology. You have to have a mindset of paranoia. And a great example here is Google, who invented a lot of this stuff, but very much feel like an incumbent. And you can see when any company that talks about how they've been doing it for a long time, like any company is like, hey, no, why is everyone talking about these other ones? We've invented all this stuff. You should be really paranoid. So like whenever in Intercom, whenever I hear us say, oh, we've been doing like AI for 4 or 5 years, that's a dangerous mindset. Because it's true, we have, but it's a very dangerous mindset. You should always think, you got to feel like the scrapping new entrant. You got to feel like by default you'll lose at a time of technology transition. That's the only way to be paranoid enough to survive and make the transition. So I think we get that.
Is there something to be said about being a business that has been in the industry for so long and has lots of data that could potentially be valuable? Are there potential scale economies that you take into account when you're coming up with your strategy to make sure that you always maintain an edge over some AI native competitor that pops up?
We definitely have data, and more importantly, we have deep problem understanding that maybe some new folks won't have. Like the data is useful, but I don't know if it's critical. I don't know if data is in the current AI landscape to be discovered, but I think right now, I'm not sure how critical data is. I certainly wouldn't be sitting back behind the big moat and saying, we've got a great data moat, we're going to be fine. No way. It's all to play for. And then these large language models are trained on like lots of public data. They get a very high level of general intelligence, and then you can train them, you can fine tune them, or just prompt, few shot train them very effectively on a very small amount of data. So I don't know if it's certainly not clear to me that data is this big edge. I think deep problem understanding, and then obviously like our existing platform, and then the scale of our investment. Like we are a pretty scaled organization here. So we can successfully pivot to this new thing. And I think we're mid-pivot at the moment. I think we can get a lot done and we can deliver a lot of value for our customers.
Totally agree with you. So I'm going to change topics just very slightly. How do you see AI as being this technology that's taking software from interactive to conversational?
I think like at a fundamental level, there is something new and there's something cool here. Like the different philosophies in this and different thoughts in this, I guess to cut to the chase, I think AI is going to change a lot of how software looks and feels. If I had to bet, I would bet that we'll be using our voices to give commands to software a lot more, and that they will be rendering customized situational responses to it, customized situational interface to it a lot more. That's a few years away yet, but like in 5 years, my guess would be very good chance that software looks quite different, that it's much more conversational, probably voice conversational in terms of the input to the software. And then the output is quite dynamic. I think the output will probably still be text and then maybe a situationally rendered user interface. So I think it's going to be very interesting. And the reason why I think it's going to be text and conversational input, the lens I always use is like, imagine there was two humans. Imagine that you couldn't touch the computer. You could just interface with another human who touched the computer. And I told you like, hey, you're going to have to work together in this mode. a lot. You're going to have to do a high productivity task with this person for a long time. How do you want to do that? How do you want to communicate? And then watch what those two humans do. That's an extremely good lens for figuring out what the ideal interface is for a human. And people certainly won't go up on an interface where like I type buttons on a keyboard to talk to the other human to do stuff. I'll just use my voice. I'll talk to them. I'll say things. That's this high bandwidth command giving interface. Maybe for some very specific tasks, editing a photo on a pixel per pixel basis, I'll stop giving a voice command. I'll instead pick up the mouse and the keyboard or the touchpad or whatever and do that. Think about two humans interfacing and the moment at which they would get frustrated and take over the mouse and keyboard. Those are the times when you're going to use a mouse and keyboard in the future. And that's the model I use. And so I do think that AI like GPT-4 and future models are going to be really extremely good at understanding the meaning behind what you said. They're going to be extremely good at reassembling from a messy conversation the actual intent, because human conversations are so messy. We're always error correcting and nuancing things. If you actually get someone to write a transcript of what was actually said, there's a lot of art between going the messy human conversation and the transcript. And in the past, that's been a barrier, but now AI models are good enough to do this reliably and getting much more reliable all the time. Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more conversation. I think instead of navigating down menus to a depth of 6 to do a long tail task, or instead of figuring out, I just need this report. How do I get this report? Just start describing it to the computer and you'll get prompted for clarification. And I think it's going to be big changes there. And for Intercom, I think we are well positioned in some sense for customer support in that there'll be like written customer support. We just, maybe yesterday, I think we shipped our new phone feature where actually you can have like video chats and share screens. And so we're getting into those other modalities as well, not just text back and forth, but voice as well. So I think we're well positioned for this for customer support. And I think we're going to see big changes here.
And what do you think this means, this move to conversational, for engineers and this next wave of companies as well?
For engineers, I think there's major trends that impact engineers a lot in terms of the rise of co-pilots and the rise of AI-generated tooling. That's probably where my head would go more so than conversational interfaces. Obviously, engineers, I think generally, there's an amazing new technology here with advanced LLM-powered AI. And I think engineers should definitely, across the board, be taking a look at that. They probably shouldn't be ignoring it and hoping it's going to go away. I'm telling folks recently, like, I remember the early days of cloud computing. I remember like extreme skepticism among some engineering buddies about the cloud. They were just like, it's not a real thing. And I definitely think AI is going to be a real thing in the way that cloud computing was. And so I would say, don't ignore it. Go have a look at it. But beyond that, I think it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're, I don't know, I was going to say, if you're trying to build Photoshop, but yeah, even if you're trying to build Photoshop, you're being disrupted by AI. I think it's early days, but it's going to be very wide in its eventual footprint. I think we'll look back at this as very early days, and probably most of our takes today we'll look back as like naive. And you're talking about like projecting forward on an exponential, and it's a bit like people say, oh, well, an exponential, you can never go just right. You're either too early or too late, just due to that exponential curve. And I think it's true with a technology trend like this. You're either going to way overestimate it or like way underestimate it. And I think recent trends have been way overestimated, like crypto and blockchain. The real impact of that, I don't think has been too high. VR, we're still waiting for the killer interface, the killer app, the killer hardware form factor. But I think this AI thing is going to be big. So I just think, so that means basically that it's very difficult to overestimate. And I guess we could be wrong. I just don't see it. Like, we're all in as a company. I personally all in on this AI thing. I think it's going to be huge. So it's very difficult when you start of a massive wave like this. It's very difficult to say where the limits are. Yeah, probably just don't even have the mental worldview to see where the limits are yet.
I would tend to agree with you. And I think most of the folks that are listening to this podcast would also tend to agree with you as well. Okay, Fergal, as an aside, this next 18 to 24 months, as you mentioned, it's really difficult to know where things are headed. It's not even 18, 24 months, but also where things are headed next month. It's the speed of the space is just moving so quickly. But it is one of those situations where there does seem to be a race for survival for companies. Who's going to be able to adapt to these new circumstances and who's going to fall out of favor and maybe not keep up with the times. What are your thoughts on what it's going to take to survive this latest Darwinian race for survival over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think it depends somewhat on the industry you're in. Different industries are going to be more disrupted more quickly than others. We obviously think we're in customer support. We think it's going to be disrupted fast. So we think it's important to pivot to that extremely quickly. It's still early days. If we look, here we are, we're talking a lot about AI. Our customers are still like at an early stage of getting their heads into this and what it means for their business. So for us, this is skating to where the puck is going. We think it's a really big puck. I don't know what the metaphor exactly is there. We think it's really important to do this. So I think we're still in the sort of the kind of the warm-up phase here, or the early phase here. And it's the to lose side of this, talking to technologists all the time. But we're building the first generation of a major wave. And I think looking back to previous technology revolutions, I think is always instructive. The early days of the internet, people were experimenting with like building with websites and so on. But it was a long way from there to like the major companies that were built out on top of that infrastructure. And so I think that if you believe, like I do, that this is just a wave of such magnitude, then it's very hard to invest too much at this point. And you're not trying to invest for a rapid return. Some companies will do that because they're in a maybe they're in a B2C, they're in a very fast moving space like that. Those of us kind of more B2B, we have adoption cycles. Our customers take time to adopt, they take time to get educated. Particularly if you're trying to build AI that's like more of a toy, more of a consumer B2C curiosity, you can have really fast adaptation. But if you're trying to build AI that goes into a business process, there's an adoption time. There's an adoption time for our customers. Of course there is. And so I think now it's what we're in at the moment is positioning and building when that market starts to become really ready. And how long that is, I don't think anybody knows. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's 18 months, maybe it's 6 months. It's hard to know. Like, we've shipped AI products early, we've gotten traction, but we're still early adopters. But even as recently in the last month or two, our customers are starting to see the rising kind of sigmoid or the rising exponential. I think we don't really know, and I think it depends on the vertical. But if you believe the wave is as big as I believe it is, then obviously don't run out of money. Don't invest all your money and end up with nothing left in the bank. But subject to your runway, it's hard to go wrong.
That's something I think about a lot. And it's something I think about every single day, really, when it comes to my startup is how do you build for today, but also for tomorrow? That's one of those questions that I repeatedly ask our team as well. And I think you put it so well that the appetites and behaviors and understanding of consumers is evolving really quickly. And so you want to see where the puck is headed so that you can build for the needs later on, because honestly, it's impossible to keep up with the changing demands day over day. But at the same time, you have to essentially walk your prospects and customers to that future in a way that satisfies their cravings and scratches their itches today, but also doesn't necessarily pigeonhole you.
Yeah.
From like a philosophical level, how do you think about that? Because it seems like that is something that is top of mind at Intercom is you're looking to see where the puck is headed, but sometimes there is going to be a conflict between what the space might look like a year from now and what's a worthy investment for solving the problems that may emerge in the next year or solving for some needs that may emerge in the next year, while also addressing the needs for today.
Look, absolutely. There's different schools of thought. There's different ways of modeling this, and it's going to be different from business to business. Things that come top of mind. One thing is we think a lot in Intercom now about what we call internally, so internal language. We talk about like Horizon 1, which is like the next 18 months, the things we can see, the things that you would need in an AI-powered version of our current customer support platform. And we also spend some time thinking about like what we call Horizon 2, which is like the time after that. AI first, AI native customer support platforms. What do they look like? And while we have opinions and thoughts on Horizon 2, it's hard because it's downstream of this massively changing technology. And I think the best you can do is come up with probability distributions across possible futures and then make portfolio bets to respond to that. And so I think me running my AI group and also Intercom as a whole, we have different theses about the future with like different probabilities of when they'll arrive. And then we have to make a balanced portfolio of bets that takes that into account. And I think you can't ignore what we call Horizon 1. You can't ignore the current market reality of your customers. You can't, if you get your timing of the next wave wrong, you cannot go out of business in the interim. You can't abandon your current customers. You have to continue to build better and better things that unlock value, meeting the market where it's at the moment. But also, you can't just do that. You also have to build for the future. And by default, companies like us will be dragged too much to the present. So like the hard thing for companies like us to do is to build too much. The challenge for us is to make sure we invest enough in the future. Conversely, a new entrant, a new startup that's raised like a whole bunch of money to attack customer support, perhaps with a new product, their challenge is going to be they'll build too much for the future. They'll build the segue. So like, you don't want to be Barnes and Noble in this story, or like Borders, or someone like a bookstore that goes out of business. That's so easy to do. And it's so easy to be like, we've got a website, we'll be fine. And it's actually your competition, Jeff Bezos, he's thinking about logistics and building like warehouses and distribution centers. And you're thinking that you've solved this with your website. You don't. So you don't want to be that company. Then you also don't want to be Segway. You don't want to be like, hey, this is the revolutionary transport thing of the future. And none of you get it yet, but we have figured it out in the Golden Tower. Here it is. You don't want to be that either. And so you got to find some balance here. Our head of product, Paul Adams, always talks about building a bridge to the future. And he would push a lot for a company like Intercom to like, got to meet our customers where they are, engage with your reality, and then build them a bridge to the future. I would maybe push a lot. I would be like, hey, by default, we're an incumbent. By default, we'll spend too much time in the customer's reality. And then it'll change so fast before we even realize, and we'll be beaten by somebody else who has gotten their head into the future. And so probably it's an agonizing thing. This trade-off is agonizing. It should be agonizing. It should feel agonizing. That means you're doing it right. That means you're engaging with the real difficulty of trying to figure out the balance to make here. And I think you got to push pretty hard different ways and stress test it, and then figure out probably some portfolios. Some percentage of your bets are for this future coming wave so that you can be a leader there. Some percentage of your bets are for the current landscape you can see so that you can work with your customers, grow your business, and bring them to that future as they get ready for it. Listen to your customers, look at the technology, and we get paid to try and integrate the two. That's where the magic happens, when you get that timing right. And then hopefully we'll get that timing right. You never know for sure. That doesn't make it fun.
Very well said. Okay, so to close here, I'm wondering, what are you most excited about when it comes to the future of Intercom, and especially Finn at Intercom?
I'm extremely excited about the fact that we have decided to make this major bet on AI. And for a long time, I've been in the company, I've been saying, hey, like, this stuff is coming. We don't know when, but it's coming, and it's going to disrupt our space. And we're reading like Google's papers on their Lambda system, which is like one of their kind of early like dialogue models a few years ago now. You know, it appeared to be giving performance based on their papers, a bit like we've seen with ChatGPT. We were like, wow, if this is real, this is going to change our space. This is coming. And now it feels like that's happened. We've crossed that watershed moment, and we are all in here. The company is all in here. We are playing this game. We think AI is going to change customer support. We want to be the company that leads that. We have clarity on that internally, and that we're going to do whatever it takes. We have alignment and clarity all the way up and down the company. And I think that is extremely exciting, because I think there is massive value for our customers, for the end users of the world, for the people who today wait for ages for a customer support query. And right now we have this bot, Finn, and Finn is doing, maybe day one, maybe it's going to do like a 30% resolution rate for you with no configuration. That's huge. That's like radical change to your support unit. That's real. That's probably even me being a little bit more conservative as someone on the AI team. You know, I think our median reported rate in the product is 40%, north of 40%, and loads of customers get 50%. It's good. It's doing something really amazing there. And I think that with the direction of travel and technology, we can maybe get that up a lot, get that a lot higher. And so that's extremely exciting in terms of like human productivity, in terms of like value for end users. So yeah, I'm really excited that like we are taking a big bet, because I think it is going to really change your space. And the timeline, you don't know the timeline. You never know the timeline, right? All you can say like feels soon, but you don't actually know. What you can say is we're committed to this. We're committed that whether it happens like today or whether it happens soon or like in a year or two or however long it takes, we're betting on this enough that we're going to be the leader there. So I'm genuinely excited. That's an exciting position to be in. And then more broadly, I'm just so excited about the technology, by like how fast AI has suddenly gotten amazing. And yeah, got to see what happens there. Will we get more open source? Will OpenAI forge forward more? Will all of the above happen? And I think, yeah, it's going to be an amazing products to build everywhere. So yeah, exciting times.
Thanks so much for a great conversation, Fergal.
Look, really appreciate it, Haroon. Thanks so much. Really, really great questions. Really enjoyed it.
It was my pleasure.